Jake's innocent gesture of sharing Earth tea with his alien roommate re-sparks an ancient bonding ritual, locking them in a bedroom all night. Jake leaned against the wall of his small quarters, eyeing the pile of odd gadgets his new alien roommate had brought along. Vree, a tall, lithe being with iridescent skin and curious, ever-shifting eyes, had spent the last 15 minutes unpacking what looked like a hybrid of a blender, a microscope, and a portable disco ball. She worked with precise, almost militaristic efficiency, muttering to herself in an alien language punctuated by occasional clicks. "So, what exactly are all those for?" Jake ventured, trying to sound casual. "Observational tools," Bree replied without looking up. Her voice was cool and slightly melodic, though her tone suggested she didn't appreciate interruptions. "I must document your species thoroughly. Your physiology is perplexing." Jake frowned. "Perplexing? Thanks, I guess." Finally, she straightened, fixing him with her otherworldly gaze. "Do you excrete pheromones constantly, or only under certain conditions?" Jake blinked. "I'm sorry, what?" "Pheromones," she repeated patiently. "Your scent markers. Are they involuntary?" He scratched the back of his neck. I shower daily, if that's what you're asking." Vree tilted her head, the glow in her eyes dimming slightly. "Fascinating. Your species relies on water-based cleansing rituals? Primitive but effective." Jake wasn't sure if he should feel insulted. "Yeah, well, we humans have our quirks." To change the subject, he grabbed a small box off the counter. "Here, a little Earth welcome gift. Thought it might make things less weird." He handed her a tea bag, one of the few luxuries he'd brought from home. Vree examined it like it was a biological specimen, her long fingers turning it over delicately. "What is this?" "Tea," Jake said. "It's a drink. You steep it in hot water. It's relaxing." She stared at him for a beat too long, then sniffed the bag. Her eyes widened, glowing brightly. "You offered me a bonding agent?" Jake laughed awkwardly. "It's just tea." "Silence!" Vree commanded, her voice suddenly imperious. She dropped the tea bag onto a table and pulled out a small device, which beeped and emitted a faint green mist. "You have initiated the sacred ritual of compatibility bonding." Jake froze. "Wait, what?" Vree grabbed something from her pile of gadgets, a sleek rectangular device, and pointed it at the door. The metallic hiss of a lock engaging made Jake's stomach drop. "Did you just lock us in?" he asked, incredulous. "The bonding process is sacred," she said, ignoring his question. "Once initiated, it must be completed without interruption. Leaving before the ritual concludes is dishonorable." Jake stared at her, half expecting her to crack a smile. She didn't. "Okay, hold up," he said, holding his hands up defensively. "It's just tea. A drink. You know, caffeine, antioxidants, all that good stuff." "You misunderstand," Bree said solemnly. "On my planet, presenting a bonding agent signifies a willingness to establish a profound connection. It is not undertaken lightly." Jake rubbed his temples. "Of course it doesn't. Because why would anything about this day be normal?" Vree ignored him, consulting her rectangular device, which emitted a series of chirps. "Step 1, mutual physical synchronization." "Physical what now?" "Dancing," she clarified. "It fosters attunement." "Dancing?" Jake repeated. "I don't dance." Vree's glowing eyes narrowed. "You must. The bonding ritual cannot proceed otherwise." Before Jake could protest, Vree tapped a button, and a strange, rhythmic alien melody filled the room. It sounded like techno played underwater. Without hesitation, she started moving, smooth, fluid motions that looked more like martial arts than dancing. Jake watched, slack-jawed. "I can't compete with that." She paused, frowning. "You must try. Synchronization is key." With a resigned sigh, Jake stepped forward, attempting to mimic her movements. He swung his arms and shuffled his feet awkwardly, his efforts earning a quizzical look from Vree. "You are uncoordinated," she observed. "Yeah, well, humans aren't exactly born dancers," Jake shot back, narrowly avoiding a stumble. Their dance continued for several minutes, with Vree critiquing Jake's every move. When he finally collapsed onto the bed, panting, she looked at him with something that might have been amusement. "You have completed the minimum requirements," she said. "Great," Jake wheezed. "Can we call it a night?" "Hardly. There are many steps left," Jake groaned, sitting up. "What's next? Karaoke?" Vree tilted her head. "What is karaoke?" "Never mind," he muttered. Consulting her device again, Vree announced. "Step 2, Knowledge Exchange. I will ask you questions to assess your cognitive and emotional compatibility." "Wonderful," Jake muttered. "Let's get this over with." She sat across from him, her posture impeccably straight. "Question 1. What is your species' primary reproductive strategy?" Jake choked. "I'm sorry, what?" "Reproductive strategy," she repeated. "How does your species ensure genetic diversity while maintaining population stability?" "That's a really personal question." She blinked unperturbed. "It is fundamental to understanding your compatibility." "Answer." After a moment's hesitation, Jake gave her a heavily sanitized explanation, carefully avoiding any graphic details. She listened intently, occasionally nodding. When he finished, she asked, "And how do you personally ensure your genetic contributions are successful?" Jake stared at her. "I'm not having this conversation." "Why not?" "Because it's weird." Vree tilted her head again, clearly puzzled. "Humans are oddly secretive about their biology." "It's called boundaries," Jake said. "Boundaries are inefficient," she replied. Jake sighed. "Let's just move on." Vree studied him for a moment, then said, "Very well. Question 2. What do you fear most?" The sudden shift caught Jake off guard. He hesitated, unsure if she was serious. Spiders, I guess?" "Spiders?" she repeated. "Are they a predatory threat?" "No, they're just creepy." "Fascinating," Vree murmured, typing something into her device. "Your fears are irrational but deeply ingrained. A peculiar trait." Jake frowned. "Glad to be your science project." For the first time, Vree's lips curved into something resembling a smile. "You intrigue me, human." Jake wasn't sure if that was a compliment or a warning. "Yeah, well, you're not exactly boring either." And with that, the first step of their bonding ritual came to a close. Jake slumped against the wall, trying to catch his breath. Vree stood in front of him, her gaze piercing, holding her rectangular device like a holy artifact. The glow of her skin pulsed faintly, which Jake now realized was her version of being excited, or maybe smug. "Phase 2 begins now," she announced, sitting cross-legged on the bed with an air of solemnity. "Great," Jake muttered. "What fresh hell is this?" "We will exchange personal truths," Vree said. "Full transparency is essential for compatibility." "Yeah, I'm not sure I signed up for this truth or dare nonsense," Jake replied, rubbing his face. "It is not optional," Vree said simply, as if that explained everything. "You may begin." "Reveal a deeply held secret." Jake hesitated. "A secret? Okay. I once had a crush on my high school math teacher, Mrs. Bellamy. She had this way of—" "Stop," Bree interrupted, her tone sharp. "This is relevant. Why?" "I thought we were sharing personal stuff," Jake said defensively. "You are divulging irrelevant mating memories," Bree replied, her head tilting. "Was this teacher a suitable partner for procreation?" "Good God, no!" Jake exclaimed. "She was, like 60. "Then your statement lacks utility," Bree concluded. "My turn." Jake rolled his eyes but said nothing. Vree's face grew uncharacteristically serious. "In my adolescence, I was ostracized for my inability to produce standard pheromones. My peers deemed me defective." Jake's annoyance faded. "That's harsh." "It was accurate," she replied matter-of-factly. "However, my anomaly led to advancements in synthetic pheromone production." I contributed to my species despite my genetic failings. Jake blinked, unsure how to respond. Well, sounds like you turned a negative into a positive? That is an acceptable interpretation, Bree said. Now, next truth. Jake sighed. Fine. I once stole my older brother's car to impress a girl. Got caught, grounded for 3 months. Happy? Fascinating, Bree murmured, typing on her device. You engaged in high-risk behavior to attract a mate. I was 17. I didn't think that hard about it. Bree leaned closer, her glowing eyes locking onto his. Would you steal a vehicle from me? Jake froze. That's a really weird question. It is vital to assessing loyalty, she replied. I'd prefer not to answer. Cowardice noted, Bree said, marking something on her device. Jake groaned. You're insufferable, you know that? Bree ignored him, sniffing the air suddenly. Her glow brightened, and she sat up straighter. I detect heightened chemical signals in this room. Pheromones. Jake frowned. What does that mean? It means your body is releasing attraction markers, she said simply. Okay, now you're just making stuff up. Incorrect. Observe. She pulled out a small orb that emitted a mist when she pressed a button. Jake waved his hand to clear the air, but then he felt strange. Warm even. What the hell is that? He demanded. A compatibility enhancer, Bree replied casually. It amplifies natural chemical responses. Jake's pulse quickened. Turn it off. Bree ignored him, tilting her head. Interesting. Your markers have increased. Are you experiencing elevated heart rate or arousal? Jake's face turned red. What kind of question is that? An important one, Bree said seriously. Answer. No. Jake lied, scooting further away. She studied him for a moment, then reached for the orb again. Jake scrambled to stop her, knocking it out of her hand. The orb rolled under the bed. You are overly reactive, Bree observed. You locked me in a room, pumped it full of alien love gas, and now you're psychoanalyzing me. How do you think I should react? Bree considered this. Your species is prone to over-exaggeration. Jake glared. Oh, I'm sorry, am I not calm enough for this ritual you sprung on me? Bree's lips twitched, almost like a smile. You are amusing, human. Glad you're having fun. Jake grumbled. Bree stood abruptly, grabbing what looked like a fruit from her pile of gadgets. It was glowing faintly, emitting a soft hum. What's that now? Jake asked warily. A pheromone compatibility detector, Bree said. Eat it. Jake stared at her. Why would I eat that? To determine if our chemical signals align. I'm not eating your weird alien fruit. You must, Bree insisted. It is the only way to proceed. Jake sighed, taking the fruit reluctantly. If this kills me, I'm haunting you. He took a bite. The fruit was oddly sweet, with a texture somewhere between a peach and a marshmallow. Almost immediately, he felt a tingling sensation in his mouth. Bree leaned closer, her glow intensifying. What do you feel? Like I just ate a weird peach, Jake said flatly. Describe your emotional state. Annoyed. Bree frowned. Unusual. The detector should amplify feelings of connection. Maybe your detector's broken. She tilted her head. Impossible. Jake crossed his arms. Maybe humans just don't react to this stuff the way your species does. Bree seemed to consider this, then nodded. A reasonable hypothesis. We will proceed to the next phase. Jake groaned. Of course we will. Before he could protest further, Bree grabbed her device again and began tapping rapidly. Jake felt his stomach churn as he realized he wasn't getting out of this anytime soon. You know, he said. For someone who claims to be all about science, you're awfully pushy. Efficiency is essential, Bree replied. Prolonged hesitation wastes valuable time. Yeah, well, humans aren't big on efficiency when it comes to this kind of stuff. Another flaw in your species, she said, typing furiously. Jake rolled his eyes. You really know how to make a guy feel special. Ree paused, looking at him curiously. Do you wish to feel special? Jake blinked. What? No. That's not what never mind. Ree tilted her head. Humans are perplexing. Yeah, you've mentioned that. Ree's glow brightened slightly. Despite your deficiencies, you are tolerable. Jake raised an eyebrow. Gee, thanks. You are welcome. Jake sighed, leaning back against the wall. This night just keeps getting weirder. It is not yet over, Bree said, her tone ominous. Of course it isn't, Jake muttered. And so, the ritual continued. Jake sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the glowing alien fruit remnants still in his hand. The tingling sensation hadn't stopped, and he wasn't sure if it was the fruit or just the sheer absurdity of the situation. Ree was back at her device, typing furiously while her glow pulsed in an erratic rhythm. You okay over there? Jake asked, genuinely concerned for a moment. I am processing, she replied without looking up. Your responses have been unexpected. Join the club, Jake muttered, tossing the fruit core onto the table. So, what's next in this wild compatibility test of yours? Finger painting? Interpretive dance? Ree turned sharply, her glow brightening. The next step is physical proximity evaluation. Jake frowned. You're gonna have to be more specific. You and I will occupy the same resting area, Bree said as if it were the most logical thing in the world. Jake blinked. Hold on, are you saying we're sharing the bed? Correct. Yeah, that's not happening. It must, she insisted, crossing her arms. This step evaluates our ability to coexist in confined quarters. Jake stood up, shaking his head. Look, I get that this is normal for your species or whatever, but humans have this thing called personal space. Personal space is inefficient, Bree replied. Your resistance is noted, but irrelevant. Before Jake could argue further, Ree was already adjusting the bed. Her species clearly didn't understand the concept of subtlety, as she removed a chunk of the frame to make it more accommodating for her height. Jake watched in a mix of awe and horror as she worked with precision, her glowing eyes scanning the pieces like a carpenter on steroids. Great, Jake said sarcastically. You made the bed bigger. That's definitely the problem here. You are illogical, Bree said, sitting on the now reinforced mattress. Your objections lack merit. Jake sighed, throwing up his hands. Fine. You want to share the bed? Whatever. Just no tentacle stuff. Bree raised an eyebrow. Tentacle stuff? Never mind, Jake muttered, climbing onto the opposite side of the bed. He made a point of staying as far away from her as possible, practically hugging the edge. Ree studied him for a moment. Your positioning is suboptimal. Yeah, well, my comfort zone isn't optimal for weird alien rituals. Explain comfort zone, Bree said, her tone genuinely curious. It's a human thing, Jake replied, suddenly feeling self-conscious. We like our space. Especially when we sleep. Fascinating, Bree murmured, inching closer. Jake held up a hand. Nope. Stop. Right there. Bree paused, tilting her head. You are unusually tense. Does proximity to others cause you distress? Only when it's forced, Jake replied. Like now. Bree seemed to consider this, then nodded. I will adjust my approach. Jake relaxed slightly. Thank you. But then she shifted closer anyway, her glow dimming slightly as she settled next to him. This distance is sufficient. Jake groaned. You're impossible. I am efficient, she corrected. And you are overly sensitive. Jake rolled onto his side, facing away from her. Yeah, well, enjoy your efficiency. For a moment, there was silence. Jake almost thought she'd fallen asleep, if aliens even did that, when her voice broke the quiet. Do you find me attractive? Jake froze. I'm sorry, what? It is a simple question, she said calmly. Your pheromone responses earlier suggested a level of attraction. Jake turned back toward her, glaring. I'm not answering that. Why not? Because it's awkward. Awkwardness is irrelevant, Bree replied. Jake sighed, running a hand through his hair. Fine. You're objectively attractive. There. Happy? Bree's glow brightened slightly. Interesting. Glad you think so, Jake muttered, turning back over. Can we sleep now? Unlikely, Bree said. The bonding process is ongoing. Jake groaned. Of course it is. The next few minutes passed in tense silence, with Jake trying desperately to ignore the fact that Bree was lying inches away from him. Her presence was impossible to ignore, though, not just because of the faint hum she seemed to emit, but also because she kept shifting slightly, her movements deliberate yet completely foreign. Are you fidgeting? Jake finally asked, exasperated. I am calibrating, Bree replied. Calibrating what? My sleeping position. Jake sat up. You're making this up as you go, aren't you? Bree raised an eyebrow. You doubt the sanctity of this ritual? Oh, I'm sure it's sacred, Jake said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. But you're having way too much fun with it. Bree's lips twitched, and Jake could swear she was suppressing a smile. Your observations are partially accurate. Jake pointed at her. I knew it. Do not misunderstand, Bree said quickly. The ritual is legitimate. However, your reactions are entertaining. Jake flopped back onto the bed. Glad I could amuse you. You are amusing, she said matter-of-factly. Jake stared at the ceiling. This is the weirdest night of my life. Bree shifted again, and Jake felt her inch closer. He glanced over to find her watching him, her glowing eyes studying his face. What now? He asked. You intrigue me, human. Jake blinked. Thanks? Your behavior is inconsistent. Your words often contradict your actions. Yeah, that's called being human. Bree tilted her head. It is endearing. Jake's heart skipped a beat. He wasn't sure if it was the pheromones, the alien fruit, or just sheer exhaustion, but for a moment, he forgot how weird the situation was. Thanks, he said again, his voice quieter this time. Bree leaned slightly closer, her gaze still locked onto his. You are welcome. The silence that followed was heavier than before, charged with something Jake couldn't quite put into words. He wasn't sure if it was tension, curiosity, or just the sheer absurdity of everything that had happened. Seriously, he said finally, breaking the moment. Can we sleep now? Unlikely, Bree replied, her tone lighter than before. Jake sighed. Figures. And so, the night dragged on. Jake lay staring at the ceiling, trying to convince himself that the faint humming sound from Bree's glowing body was soothing rather than unnerving. The silence between them felt fragile, like it could shatter at any moment, and it did. Phase 4. Bree announced abruptly, sitting up with the same unrelenting seriousness she'd maintained all night. Jake groaned. I thought we were done. There is one final step, she said, reaching for the device that had been dictating the entire ordeal. It chirped twice as she tapped it. Dream alignment. Jake sat up. Dream alignment? What even is that? It is the most sacred aspect of the ritual, Bree explained. Our subconscious minds must connect to ensure long-term compatibility. Jake pinched the bridge of his nose. Okay, first off, you locked me in here because I gave you tea. Second, I didn't sign up to share my dreams with anyone, let alone someone who thinks synchronized dancing and weird fruit are legitimate bonding activities. You are overcomplicating this, Bree said. The process is simple. We will wear the neural interface and enter a shared dream state. Jake stared at her. That doesn't sound simple at all. Your resistance is noted, Bree said, holding up two thin bands with faintly glowing circuits. But unnecessary. Jake sighed heavily. Fine. Let's get this over with. Bree handed him one of the bands. Place this on your forehead. He did as instructed, grumbling under his breath about the ridiculousness of the situation. The band felt cool against his skin, and the faint hum it emitted reminded him of the time he'd accidentally sat too close to an industrial-grade microwave. "Relax," Bree instructed, adjusting her own band. "The interface will guide you." "Sure, because that makes it less weird," Jake muttered. Before he could protest further, the room around him seemed to dissolve. Colors swirled and shifted, and he found himself standing in what looked like a mash-up of his childhood bedroom and an alien jungle. Vree appeared beside him, her glow slightly dimmer but still unmistakable. "Welcome to the dream state," she said calmly, gesturing at their bizarre surroundings. Jake looked around, bewildered. "Why does this look like my old room?" "The interface blends elements of both our subconscious minds," Bree explained. "It is a reflection of our innermost thoughts." Jake frowned. "So, the jungle part is you?" "Correct." "Well, I hope you like action figures and bad wallpaper," Jake said, gesturing to the shelves lined with plastic toys from his childhood. Bree walked over to one of the shelves, picking up a small figurine of a robot. "This is sentimental?" "Yeah, I guess," Jake said. "It's from when I was a kid." "Fascinating," Bree murmured, placing the figure back. She turned to him, her glowing eyes narrowing slightly. "Your subconscious is disorganized." "Thanks," Jake said dryly. "Glad we're bonding." Suddenly, the dream shifted. The jungle grew darker, and the bedroom walls faded, replaced by a swirling void. Jake turned to Vree, whose glow had brightened again. Is this supposed to happen?" he asked nervously. "The interface is adapting," Bree said. "Do not be alarmed." "Too late," Jake muttered, as strange shapes began to form in the void. The shapes solidified into humanoid figures, vague, faceless versions of people Jake had known. One of them stepped forward, and Jake recognized the shape of his ex-girlfriend. She was pointing at him, her voice echoing in the void. "You're always running away, Jake." "Oh, come on," Jake said, glaring at the figure. "This isn't therapy night." Vree tilted her head. "Who is this individual?" "No one important," Jake said quickly, turning to her. "Can we skip this part?" Vree ignored him, stepping closer to the figure. "Your subconscious has prioritized this individual." "Why?" "Because my brain hates me," Jake muttered. The figure dissolved before Vree could ask more questions, and the void shifted again. This time, they were standing in what looked like a starship's control room. Vree's glow dimmed slightly as she looked around. "This is from my subconscious," she said softly. "A memory." Jake followed her gaze and saw what looked like younger versions of Vree and several others of her species. They were gathered around a console, speaking in their melodic, clicking language. Vree stood apart from the group, her posture tense. "You don't look too happy," Jake said, glancing at the younger Vree. "This was a pivotal moment," Vree replied. "I was being judged for my inability to produce natural pheromones." Jake looked at her. "And this is supposed to help us bond?" "It is a truth," Vree said simply. "Truths must be acknowledged." Before Jake could respond, the dream shifted again. They were back in the jungle bedroom hybrid, but this time, it was raining, if the strange, glowing droplets falling from the sky could even be called rain. "This is a side effect of the interface," Bree said, sounding uncharacteristically uncertain. "Great," Jake muttered. "Because this night wasn't weird enough already." Suddenly, Bree stepped closer to him, her glowing eyes locking onto his. "Do you regret this bonding ritual?" Jake blinked. "What?" "No. I mean, yeah, it's weird, but I guess it hasn't been all bad." Bree tilted her head. "Explain." Jake hesitated. "I don't know. You're interesting. And not just in a wow, this alien locked me in my room kind of way. You're smart, and kind of funny in a really weird way." Bree's glow brightened slightly. "You find me amusing?" "Yeah," Jake said, his voice softer now. "I guess I do." For a moment, they just stood there, the glowing rain falling around them. Then the dream began to dissolve, and Jake felt himself being pulled back into reality. When he opened his eyes, he was back in the room, the neuroband cool against his forehead. Ree was already removing hers, her expression unreadable. The interface has concluded, she said. The results are acceptable. Jake smirked. Glad I passed your weird alien test. Ree's lips twitched. You exceeded expectations. Jake raised an eyebrow. That sounded almost like a compliment. Perhaps it was, Ree said, standing. She walked over to the door, unlocking it with a single tap. The ritual is complete. Jake stood as well, rubbing the back of his neck. So, what now? Ree turned to him, her glow bright and steady. We continue to coexist. Efficiently. Jake chuckled. Yeah, sure. Efficiently. As she stepped out of the room, Jake couldn't help but smile. Whatever else this night had been, it definitely wasn't boring.